You probably believe that if you're the best employee in the room, your career is safe. After all, that's what you've been told your entire life. Work harder than everyone else. Solve more problems. Be reliable. Stay professional. Eventually, people will notice. Eventually, you'll be rewarded. But here's what actually happens. The moment you become the person everyone depends on, you also become the person everyone quietly starts watching. Not because you're failing, because you're succeeding. And that's the part nobody tells you. Some of the most capable employees don't become targets because they're weak. They become targets because they're strong. At first, it doesn't make sense. Why would anyone want to undermine the person making everyone's job easier? Why would a manager feel uncomfortable with someone who consistently delivers results? Why would coworkers gossip about the one person who stays late, solves impossible problems, and never complains? It feels irrational. Until you understand something about human behavior. Workplaces aren't just systems for producing results. They're systems of status. And once you understand that, everything changes. Think about the last office you worked in. There was probably one person everyone relied on. Whenever something broke, whenever a client complained, whenever a deadline became impossible, one name always came up. Maybe it was yours. At first, that felt like respect. People praised you. Managers thanked you. Coworkers said things like, "We couldn't have done it without you." It felt good, useful, important. Then something strange started happening. You stopped receiving the easy projects. The interesting assignments disappeared. Instead, people brought you disasters. Other employees made mistakes. You fixed them. Someone missed a deadline. You rescued it. Someone quit unexpectedly. You absorbed their workload. Nobody asked whether you wanted more responsibility. They assumed you could handle it, because you always had. Meanwhile, another employee, someone who produced half as much, somehow kept receiving visibility. They spoke in meetings. They built relationships. They seemed relaxed. And eventually, they became your manager. You stared at the announcement, wondering how someone with less experience, fewer accomplishments, and weaker performance had somehow moved ahead. You told yourself the company must be unfair. Sometimes it is. But that's not the whole story. This is where most people get stuck. They believe workplaces reward value. In reality, workplaces reward perceived value. Those are not the same thing. Performance is invisible until someone notices it. Perception is visible before you've done anything. That's why two people can contribute completely different amounts of work, yet receive almost identical recognition. Or worse, the weaker performer receives more. Because humans rarely evaluate everything objectively. They can't. Managers oversee dozens of employees, hundreds of conversations, multiple projects, constant pressure. Their brains look for shortcuts. Who seems confident? Who communicates clearly? Who appears leadership ready? Who influences others? Who solves problems without creating more? Notice something. Only one of those questions is actually about technical performance. The rest are about perception. And that's where high performers unknowingly create their biggest problem. They become addicted to proving value through work, instead of influence. Every time another problem appears, they volunteer. Every time someone needs help, they say yes. Every time a project is failing, they quietly rescue it. It feels responsible, professional, selfless. But over time, something invisible begins happening. People stop seeing you as someone with potential. They start seeing you as infrastructure. Not because they dislike you, because you've become too reliable. Imagine a company elevator. Nobody thanks the elevator. Nobody promotes the elevator. Nobody asks how the elevator feels. They simply expect it to work. Every single day. The moment it stops, everyone notices. Until then, it's invisible. Many high performers accidentally become the elevator. Essential, but overlooked. And that's dangerous. Because promotions usually don't happen when you're indispensable in your current role. Promotions happen when someone believes you're replaceable where you are, and valuable somewhere else. If removing you would create chaos, Moving you becomes risky. So the safest decision is often leave you exactly where you are. This is why some of the hardest working employees spend years doing increasingly important work without receiving increasingly important titles. Not because they're failing, because they're trapped inside their own usefulness. Now add another layer. Coworkers. Human beings constantly compare themselves to the people around them. Not consciously. Automatically. If your performance consistently exposes someone else's weaknesses, you become uncomfortable to be around. Imagine two employees receive similar salaries. One quietly solves problems all day. The other spends time talking, networking, and avoiding responsibility. Every successful project you complete silently reminds that second employee what they aren't doing. That comparison creates psychological discomfort. And human beings have two ways to reduce discomfort: improve themselves, or reduce the status of the comparison. Guess which option requires less effort? Suddenly, small comments begin appearing. They work too much. They're trying too hard. They're kind of obsessed. They make everyone else look bad. They're not really a team player. Interesting, isn't it? Your strength slowly becomes your flaw, not because it changed, because someone needed a story that made your success feel less threatening. This isn't always malicious. Often it's subconscious. People protect their identity. If someone else consistently performs at a higher level, the easiest explanation becomes, they're different. They're lucky. They're political. They're a workaholic. Anything except, maybe I need to improve. This is why high performers often become isolated without understanding why. The better they become, the fewer genuine peers they have, the more visible their competence becomes. The more uncomfortable it can make insecure people feel, and insecurity behaves in predictable ways. It whispers, it excludes, it questions motives, it spreads subtle doubt instead of direct conflict. Because direct conflict is risky, quiet narratives are safer. Meanwhile, managers face a different psychological pressure. A truly exceptional employee creates dependence. Dependence creates vulnerability. If your manager feels the entire department would struggle without you, they're no longer managing a team. They're managing a single point of failure. Ironically, your competence begins making them nervous. Not because they want you to fail, because they need stability. That's why some managers unintentionally limit high performers, not through punishment, through protection. They hesitate to move you. They hesitate to give you cross-functional opportunities. They hesitate to recommend promotions, because replacing you feels impossible. From your perspective, you're being ignored. From theirs, they're protecting operations. Both perspectives can exist simultaneously, and that's the uncomfortable truth. Not every obstacle is personal. Many are structural, but structure doesn't change the outcome. You remain stuck. Here's another reality almost nobody discusses. The higher you perform, the higher people's expectations become. Average employees receive praise for doing their job once. High performers receive silence for doing it every day. The extraordinary slowly becomes normal. Yesterday's excellence becomes today's expectation. Eventually, you aren't rewarded for exceeding standards. You're criticized for falling slightly below the impossible standard you've created. That's one of the hidden costs of consistently outperforming everyone around you. You accidentally redefine your own baseline. Then one difficult week arrives. One missed deadline. One forgotten email. One presentation that isn't perfect. Suddenly people notice. Not because you became bad, because perfection had become your identity. And perfection is exhausting to maintain. This is the moment many high performers begin asking themselves dangerous questions. Maybe I should stop caring. Maybe I should do less. Maybe average is safer. But that's the wrong conclusion. The solution isn't becoming less valuable. It's becoming valuable differently. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop trying to be known only for doing great work. Start becoming known for creating great outcomes. There's a difference. One focuses on effort, the other focuses on influence. Instead of quietly solving every problem, Bring people into the process. Instead of fixing mistakes nobody sees, communicate what changed because of your work. Instead of accepting every responsibility, ask which responsibility creates the greatest impact. Instead of becoming the hero every day, help build systems that prevent emergencies altogether. Leaders notice people who reduce dependence, not people who increase it. This also means learning something many hardworking employees resist. Visibility is not arrogance. Giving credit to yourself isn't the same as bragging. Clarifying your contribution isn't selfish. If someone summarizes months of your work as, "the team handled it," adding, "I led the implementation and coordinated the rollout," isn't ego. It's accuracy. People can't recognize contributions they never hear about. Silence doesn't automatically become humility. Sometimes it becomes invisibility. Relationships matter too. Not fake networking. Not manipulation. Simple familiarity. People trust people they know. People recommend people they understand. Competence opens doors. Relationships determine which doors open first. That's uncomfortable for people who believe merit should be enough. Maybe it should, but human beings have never operated that way. We choose people we trust. Then we justify that decision with logic afterward. Understanding this doesn't make you cynical. It makes you realistic. And realism is far more useful than disappointment. Here's something else high performers rarely consider. Sometimes your greatest career move isn't working harder. It's making yourself promotable. That means teaching others, documenting processes, reducing dependency, developing people around you. When your absence no longer creates panic, your movement becomes possible. Companies promote people they believe can leave their current role without everything collapsing. That feels backward, but that's often how organizations survive. So if you've been wondering why your effort hasn't produced the opportunities you expected, don't immediately assume you're invisible. Ask a different question. Have you become indispensable, or have you become promotable? Those aren't the same thing. The employee everyone depends on isn't always the employee who moves up. Sometimes they're the employee who stays exactly where they are because they're simply too useful to move. That's the trap. High performers don't become targets because excellence is dangerous. They become targets because excellence changes the psychology of everyone around them. It changes expectations. It changes comparisons. It changes dependence. It changes perception. Once you understand that, you stop measuring your career only by how much work you complete. You start paying attention to how your work changes the people around you, because careers aren't built only on performance. They're built on performance that people can see, value that people can replace, and influence that people can't ignore. That's the difference between being the hardest worker in the office and becoming the person the office can't afford to overlook.